All right, problem 2 on our review talks about experimental design. So for this one, we have that does the medication Savella reduce pain for people with fibromyalgia? To answer this question, researchers conducted an experiment. They randomly assigned 800 participants that had been diagnosed with fibromyalgia into 2 groups. All of the participants in group 1 were given Savella and instructed to take it once daily. All the participants in group 2 were given pills with no active ingredients and instructed to take them once daily. So they were given the placebo, the dummy treatment. After 3 months, the research compared the change in pain levels reported by all 800 participants. So when we're outlining our design here, we always start with the number of people we have. So we have 800 people, right? And we're going to put them in a random assignment. That's important because we split them randomly into 2 groups. Group 1 has 400 participants then. Group 2 will have 400 people. Now, group 1 gets the first treatment. So we have treatment 1, which will be Savella. Group 2 gets treatment 2, which is a placebo. At the end, we are going to compare pain levels. So random assignment, split them up into 2 groups, group 1 and group 2. Group 1 gets the treatment, they get Savella. Group 2 gets the treatment of the placebo, the dummy treatment. And at the end, you're going to compare the pain levels. Now, part B for this, what if experts suggest that gender may have an effect on the results? So meaning that like men and women will react differently to the drug. What sort of experimental design should we use in this case? So in this case, we want to use what we call a block design. What a block design will do, it'll separate the men and the women. So we'll do the same exact experiment we did above, but like we would have like one diagram that is just men, and within that diagram we would have, half of the men would take the placebo, half the men would get the treatment, and then we would have another diagram that would be just for women, and half the women would get the placebo, half the women would get the treatment. Part C wants to know what if the subjects involved in the experiment and the researchers didn't know which treatment is being assigned to which group. What type of experimental design do we call this? So remember when both of them don't know what's going on, they don't know who gets the placebo, they don't know who gets the treatment, we call this a double blind. And then part D talks about what step of the design controls for the effects of the lurking variables. So remember lurking variables, let's scroll down a little bit. Lurking variables are what we have, they're variables that have an impact on the outcome, but they're not the explanatory variable. So they weren't what we were actually studying, but they have an impact. Like it's found that they have an impact too. So in this case, with the patients with fibromyalgia, their pain levels could be impacted by like how old they are, or maybe how long they've had the disease, or maybe how physically fit they are, how active they are, maybe their weight. There's lots of things that could affect it, so that when we're comparing pain levels at the end and comparing, the drug, looking at whether that drug has an impact, it's hard to tell without having that control group. So the step that really helps it is that random assignment into 2 groups, one taking the placebo, that's called the control group, and one the treatment. So this helps us really eliminate the effects of lurking variables on our experiment. Now the last part So what we call this, I know this isn't on here, but what we call this type of study in general, this is called a randomized comparative design. That's what this whole study is called.